13. Fill laws relating to OSH and environment. Regulatory framework. DOL, chemical use in the workplace. DENR, chemical importation and management of hazardous wastes, IATAC. DO, chemicals in food, pharmaceuticals, and consumer products, IASET. DE, agricultural chemicals and chemical residues in plants. DUDR, safe transport of chemicals. PNP, pyrophoric and explosive chemicals. ATC, Anti-Terrorism Council, riot control and chemical warfare agents, nerve gas DDB, precursors of dangerous drugs and controlled substances. PNRI, radioactive chemicals. OSH laws and issuances. RA 11058, an act strengthening compliance to OSHS. Labor Code of the Philippines, PD 442, 1974. Consolidation of labor and social law to afford full protection to labor, promote employment and human resources development, and ensure industrial peace. Occupational Safety and Health Standards, OSHS, 1978. A set of mandatory rules on OSH which codifies all safety orders issued prior to its promulgation. RA 11058-198 2018. An act strengthening compliance with OSH standards and providing penalties for violations thereof. Highlighted the responsibilities of employers, workers, and the Health and Safety Committee, including workers' rights. The employer shall ensure that the workplace is free from hazardous conditions that are causing or likely to cause death, illness, or physical harm to workers. Requires a safety officer to oversee the OSH program and issue work stoppage order when necessary. Impose penalties on violations of OSHS. Rules of the Occupational Safety and Health Standards. 1000 General Provisions. 1010 Other Safety Rules. Imminent danger. A condition or practice that could reasonably be expected to cause death or serious physical harm before abatement under the enforcement procedure can be accomplished. 1020 Registration. 1030 Training and accreditation. 1040 Health and Safety Committee. 1050 Notification and keeping of OCC. Illnesses and injuries. 1060 Premises of establishments. 1070 Environmental control. Rule 1070, OSH Standards, DOL Occupational Health and Environment Control. Establishes the threshold limit values for toxic and carcinogenic substances and physical agents, which may be present in the atmosphere in the work environment. Airborne contaminants. Table 8, TLV for airborne contaminants. Table 8A, mineral dust. Table 8D, human carcinogens. Physical agents, noise, illumination. General ventilation, air supply, air movement. Work environment measurement. Labor advisory in the conduct of WEM. If the WEM is conducted by the employer, the LLCO will validate the credentials of the person who performed the WEM and the calibration of the equipment. If the WEM is conducted the accredited WEM provider, the OSHC will validate the reliability of the results. Refer to the TLVS in the OSHS in evaluating the results of WEM. Rule 1076 OSHS, General Ventilation. Rule 1076.01, Atmospheric Conditions. Rule 1076.02, Air Supply. Rule 1076.03, Cleanliness. Rule 1076.04, Air Movement. Rule 1076.05, Temperature and Humidity. Department. Order No. 160-16. Guidelines on the accreditation of consulting organizations to provide WEM services. 1. Establishments shall only seek WEM services from accredited WEM providers. Otherwise, the WEM shall not be regarded as compliant to Rule 1077, Working Environment Measurement, of the OSHS. 2. No person or organization shall be allowed, hired, or provide WEM services unless the requirements of this rule are complied with. 1080 Personal protective equipment. 1090 Hazardous materials. 1100 Gas and electric welding and cutting operations. 1120 Hazardous work processes. 1140 Explosives. This rule shall apply to the manufacture, handling and storage of explosives, fireworks, and other pyrotechnic products. For the transportation of explosives outside of the plant site, the Fire Code of the Philippines shall apply. 1150 Materials handling and storage. 1160 Boiler. 1170 Unfired pressure vessels. 1180 Internal combustion engine. 1200 Machine guarding. 1210 Electrical safety. 1220 Elevators and related equipment. 1230 Identification of piping system. 1240 Power piping lines. 1410 Construction safety. 1420 Logging. 1940 Fire protection and control. Standards. Building Code of the Phil shall apply to design, construction, occupancy and use of buildings and facilities. Fire Code of the Phil fire protection equipment provided. 1950 Pesticides and fertilizers shall apply to all agricultural and industrial enterprises in which these chemicals are used or manufactured. 1960 O Services. 1970 Fees. 1980 Authority of LGUs. 1990 Final Provisions. Chemical and Toxic Substances. Joint Administrative Order 01, JAO, Series of 2009. The adoption and implementation of the Globally Harmonized System, GHS, of classification and labeling of chemicals. The objective of the JAO is to adopt and implement the classification criteria, labeling and safety data sheet, SDS, requirements of the GHS. Signed by 8 Cabinet Secretaries, DTI, DENR, DA, DOF, DO, DILG, DOL, and DOTC in Y 2009 to ensure the involvement and commitment of concerned government agencies in addressing the GHS implementation. DO 136-14, Guidelines for the implementation of GHS in Chemical Safety Program in the Workplace. Coverage. All workplaces engaged in the manufacture, use, storage of industrial chemicals, in the private sector, including their supply chain. DO 154-16, Safety and Health Standards on the Use and Management of Asbestos in the Workplace. This shall apply to all asbestos-related activities in the construction, manufacturing, dismantling, disposal and other industrial activities that handle asbestos or asbestos-containing products. Sets the occupational exposure limit to 0.1 fibers per cubic centimeter of air in an 8-hour work period. Training of companies' occupational health personnel on the prevention, diagnosis, and rehabilitation of ARDS. The employer to develop and implement a asbestos safety and health program. RA 6969 Toxic Substances and Hazardous and Nuclear Wastes Control Act, DENR. Is an act to control toxic substances and hazardous and nuclear wastes. This act covers the importation, manufacture, processing, handling, storage, transportation, sales, distribution, use and disposal of all unregulated chemical substances and mixtures in the Phils. Toxic Substances and Hazardous and Nuclear Wastes Management. Title II, Chemicals. Philippine Inventory of Chemical and Chemical Substances, PICS. Pre-Manufacture, Pre-Importation Notification Scheme, PIN. Priority Chemical List, PCL, DAO 98-29. Chemical Control Orders, CCOs. Participation in international treaties, agreements, etc. DOAO 2008-21. Gradual phase out of mercury in all Philippine healthcare facilities and institutions. Requiring a mercury management and minimization program. Organizing a mercury management team. National Program on the Elimination of Asbestos-Related Diseases. To organize the Philippine National Program on NPED. To develop the national profile and programs to eliminate asbestos-related diseases. To strengthen cooperation among the government, private and trade unions towards elimination of asbestos-related diseases. ILO Convention 170. Convention concerning safety in the use of chemicals at work. Protection of workers from harmful effects of chemicals enhances protection of the general public. Workers have a need for, and right to, information about chemicals they use at work. It is essential to prevent or reduce the incidence of chemically induced illnesses and injuries at work. International measures. To ensure mutual environmentally sound management of chemicals with other countries, The Philippine government has forged commitment to international cooperation agreements and has ratified the following conventions. Stockholm Convention. A global treaty that aims to eliminate and reduce the release of POPs, persistent organic pollutants, in the environment. The resolution concerning the ratification was adopted by the Philippines in February 2004. A global treaty that aims to eliminate and reduce the release of POPs in the environment. Dirty Dozen, the initial POPs, aldrin, chlordanel, DDTI, dieldrin, endrin, heptachlor, pesticides, toxaphene, hexachlorobenzene, Myrex, PCBs, dioxins, furans, 1 to 11 pesticides, 10 to 12 industrial chemicals, 12 byproducts, 1 intentionally produced, 2 unintentionally produced. ASCAI. Montreal Protocol. Prevention of ozone depletion and global warming. Elimination of CFC 11 and 12, halogens, methyl bromide. Rotterdam Convention. Prior informed consent procedures for certain hazardous chemicals and pesticides in international trade. Provides early warning in dangerous chemicals. Provides member countries information on certain hazardous chemicals. Basel Convention. Transboundary movement of hazardous wastes and their disposal. Controls the movement and disposal of hazardous wastes. Ratified by the Philippines on October 1993. Minamata Convention. The Minamata Convention on Mercury is a global treaty to protect human health and the environment from the adverse effects of mercury. The major highlights of the Minamata Convention on Mercury include a ban on new mercury mines, the phase-out of existing ones, control measures on air emissions, and the international regulation of the informal sector for artisanal and small-scale gold mining. OPCW. The Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, OPCW, is the implementing body of the Chemical Weapons Convention, CWC, which entered into force in 1997. As of today, OPCW has 192 member states, who are working together to achieve a world free of chemical weapons. Collective goal of preventing chemistry from ever again being used for warfare, thereby strengthening international security.